Our guest today is a candidate for United States Senator. He is currently a state senator in the 15th District. Napoleon Harris graduated from high school with honors, earned a degree at Northwestern in communications, we know that, and did some postgraduate work also with the Kellogg School, maybe? Okay. Drafted first round in the NFL and played for 7 years. Returned to his community and made a very positive contribution. Most of you know that already. He's married to his high school sweetheart, Nicole. That's so sweet. And they are the proud parents of 3 children, Napoleon IV, Noah, and Nala. So without further delay, I introduce to you our Senator, Napoleon Harris.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to Jay Doherty and the Chicago City Club, and to you, all of you who've come to assemble today to hear good old me. I'm excited. I'm excited because a young boy from Dixmoor, Illinois, now stands at the podium at the Chicago Club, and that's big. And that's big because I know of where I came from. So let me just, at this moment, since we're going to have, I would like to just have an intimate conversation about who I am, who Napoleon Harris is, and why I'm running for United States Senate. Growing up as a young boy, I'm often reminded of the challenges that I faced in my life when I think about how hard my mother worked and the things that she instilled in me to be great. I remember like it was yesterday. She's calling me into the house and asked me one simple question: who's the smartest in your classroom? And at the time I said, well, Tiana, Tiffany, because those young ladies were on the honor roll. They always answered the questions when the teacher said, raise your hand. And I was a little shy, didn't want to get involved in anything, but I knew the answers, but I didn't want to step forward. So my mom called me. She said, well, you're going to sit at this table, and we're going to work on you. And we're going to sit here until you become the smartest person in the class. So I saw my friends riding their bikes up and down the street, and I said, man, I want to have some fun. So maybe I need to be the smartest in the class. So the next time, I remember a few weeks later, she asked me. She said, who's the smartest in the class? And I said, of course, me, because I wanted to go outside and play. But what that did for me was that instilled a value in me of hard work and determination, because I knew that my mom had expectations that were higher than what I set for myself. So what that did for me, it really incentivized me with an opportunity to say, you can be great because my mother believed in. So by me telling my mother that I was the smartest in the class, I actually had to go out and demonstrate that. So I worked extremely hard in the classroom, and that carried over to me in everything that I did. I always maintained to say that I have to be the very best in all that I do. So I went to Thornton High School, that was mentioned, and then I went to Northwestern. You know, I used those same attributes that my mother taught me as a young boy, and I carried them throughout life. And my grandmother, she was a part of that solution. She said, young man, I need you to go to school, get an education, and don't forget where you come from. So I had an opportunity to play college football. Thank God, because my mother couldn't afford the education that Northwestern provided, or any other institution can provide, because we didn't have the resources in the community that I grew up in. And that was quite difficult, but I seen my mother struggle. I saw her work job after job to make sure that we had food on the table and clothes on our back. And that was my driving motivation. I wanted to make my mother proud. And to see that woman work so hard, that sometimes as she's coming in the house and working a late night job, my grandmother's getting me ready for school. And sometimes that was the only time I saw my mother, when we were crossing paths, because she was trying to provide a better opportunity for me. Got to Northwestern, and what can I say? A world-class education, world-class institution, and a world-class place for higher learning. For me, it was wonderful, because not only was I able to excel on the football field, but also in the classroom. When you get to college, and for a young man coming from the south side of Chicago, you become into this melting pot. You come from people from all different socioeconomic backgrounds, and you're able to learn from different heritages, learn from different races and different people. And that was exciting for me, because I had an opportunity to not only learn, but for others to learn from me as well. So I had a great experience academically at Northwestern. I went on to play professional sports from the Oakland Raiders. I was a first-round draft pick, played 7 wonderful years in the National Football League. And those things were great. And I really cherish those moments because it helped me to develop as a leader. I've always considered myself a leader. But those times developed me as a leader. When I get to Oakland, I'm playing with superstars. I'm playing with Jerry Rice. I'm playing with Charles Woodson. I'm playing with future Hall of Famers. And yet they entrusted me to lead the team and to lead the defense in combat. And those things I will always cherish because they made me who I am today because of those experiences that I've had. And when you fast forward, I had a successful career in sports, attended Northwestern. I decided to come back home. And I came back home in the community that I was born and raised in because I remember as a young man the lack thereof of opportunities and the economic depression, the high unemployment, and the challenges that the community faced. And I wanted to be a part of the solution. So I came back home and I invested in a community that has invested in me, created jobs and economic opportunities for those who need it and those who are willing to work hard for it. That's the opportunities that I wanted to continue to provide. So some civic and clergy leaders, they came to me one day as I was sitting in one of my businesses, and they said, we need someone to represent this community, someone who knows this community, someone who can be trusted, and someone who has the best interest of the constituents in which we live and serve. So that's when I decided to run for state senate. It was an opportunity for me because as the state senate, I truly just wanted to accomplish a few things. I wanted to improve the schools that I attended, the parks that I played, and the community in which I lived. And I wanted to be held accountable because I knew that the community that I was born and raised in needed the resources to be successful. So someone will ask, well, why you, Mr. Harris? Why are you, this young man from the south side of Chicago, Northwestern graduate and former NFL linebacker, for United States Senate? Well, it's simple. People have lost trust in government. Right here in Illinois, we have one of the most corrupt systems that we've ever seen in our lifetime in government, and we lack leadership. Illinois needs a leader in the Senate, someone who can articulate the values and needs of all the constituents of Illinois, someone who understands all too well of the issues that we are facing, and not only in our state, but in our country. I'm fortunate and blessed to have lived my American dream, going to a great university, being a first-round draft pick, playing in the Super Bowl, doing something that every young man would want to do, be a professional athlete, and also opening up a business in the community in which I was born and raised. But let's be clear. The American dream is not winning the lottery. It's not being a professional athlete. It's not being an entertainer. The American dream is the opportunity for you to open the business that you always wanted. The opportunity for you to pay for a house that you always wanted, to pay for that mortgage, to put food on the table, to send your kid off to college, or better yet, to just live out your true potential of who you are as a person. That's the American dream. And as a state senator, I've advocated for these issues. I've fought to make sure that we have business practices here in the state of Illinois that we can grow our economy so that we can put a dent into this high wage inequality that we have. So we can get people to understand that we need business and government to work together to create the jobs, to invest in the community, so we can have successful communities all across our great state. These are issues that I'm passionate about. When you talk about business and jobs, I'm an employer. I'm a small business owner. I understand the risk and rewards of business. And hearing from some of you and talking to some of you business owners, I believe you understand as well. We want to ensure as government officials that we give all the tools that we can to businesses so they can continue to be the economic engines of our communities. Small business is what drives our economy. We need to ensure that small businesses are given every resource to continue to be successful, and we all need to work together. Right now in Chicago, we're dealing with a lot of issues, not just Chicago, but in our entire state. When you talk about our deplorable criminal justice system, we've seen the tapes. We've seen the marches, 16 shots. We've seen it across the country. Trayvon Martin, Rakita Boyd, Freddie Gray. The list goes on and on. This issue is all too important to me personally. As a young African-American male, I understand these issues better than anyone. Coming up in poverty, understanding that we have to do a better job with community and our law enforcement, understanding that we need a solution that we can work together to make sure that our communities are safer and that the people in our community understand that the police's job is to serve and protect and not to hurt and neglect. And anyone that's found guilty of that should be held accountable to the higher standards. And we need a senator to ensure that. When you talk about education, I'm someone who knows this all too well, coming from a community where education is not always seems to be at the top of the list. And to be given an opportunity to go to one of the most prestigious universities in the country and to excel. Not because I couldn't, it's because I had an opportunity. We need to ensure that every young man or woman, every child in the state of Illinois has a fair and adequate opportunity to receive a quality education. Right here in Illinois, we fail. We fail in two cases. The Illinois Advisory Council suggests that we should fund education at $8,899. We fund education here at $6,119. And yet when we fail because we don't even meet the level that they set, and the level that we set, we prorated. Children are losers. We have to hold up our deal of the bargain as elected officials. When you talk about the rampage in gun violence, and you talk about the homicides that's happened here in our city, the report was just released last night or this morning. Over 100 homicides here in Chicago at the start of this year. This issue is not political for me. It's personal. My brother-in-law was murdered 2.5 years ago to an act of gun violence here in Chicago. He wasn't a gang member. He wasn't in the wrong place at the wrong time. Someone decided that his life did not have the value that it did. We can do better. There's a number of things we can do passing comprehensive gun legislation. But let's be clear. Laws alone will not change the environment in which we live. It takes community leaders like you. It takes law enforcement. It takes victims of families of violence. It takes activists. It takes clergy. It takes all of us to help put our hands together and come up with a comprehensive plan to make sure that these acts of violence are no longer tolerated. It's passion. It's time to step up. We have too many critical issues that our country and our state is facing, and we need someone at the helm who understands them intricately. I'm someone who understands these issues all too well because I've lived them, I experienced them, and I vote for them now down in Springfield. I understand it all too well. Now is the time to have a steady hand on the ship to control and guide. Justice should always be our guide. And right now, if you think about the rhetoric that's been going on when you talk about national politics, you talk about the presidency, and even now in the Senate race, one of the most important things that's coming up is the appointment of a United States Supreme Court Justice. Right here, there's too many critical issues in which we know that needs to be settled at the Supreme Court, and we have the other side talking about not even taking it up. You talk about women's rights. Talk about the constant repeal of the Affordable Care Act from the other side. When you talk about the Voters' Rights Act, when you talk about the attack on collective bargaining to make sure that weaken the unions here in the country that we all love. America is great. America is great. And we need to maintain its greatness by living out our true essence of who we are as Americans. We talk about all these issues that people love and care about, but what are we going to do about it? I stated before, people have lost trust in government. People are tired of partisan politics. What can we agree on? What can we do to push the envelope to make sure that the citizens of Illinois and across this country are receiving their fair due? That's why I'm running for United States Senate, to restore the hope that a young man from the south side of Chicago, if given the opportunity, can get a great education. To restore the hope that if he's given the opportunity to get a great education, he understands that he's equipped with the tools to come back into his community and open up jobs and economic opportunities and employ others. To restore the hope that that business owner who've always wanted to open up that business will have access to capital and have the resources to be the entrepreneur that they always wanted to be. To restore the hope that every child in America has an opportunity to a fair and adequate education. When you talk about education in particular, think about the college debt. Think about what we do to our young men and women who we tell to go off to college and be the very best that they can be. Right here in the state, we've cut funding for these young men and women. It's deplorable. We tell them, go out, reach for the stars, be the very best you can be. And yet we don't fund their futures. We can do better. So I'm running for the United States Senate because I believe in the American dream. I believe that each and every person who's willing to work hard for it should have that opportunity. We've talked about many issues and many problems that we're facing in our society. I have the experience, the knowledge, and the know-how of how to get it done. And I think now we need someone with that type of experience to ensure that the job gets done. When you talk about business, I'm a business owner, I create jobs. When you talk about government, I'm a legislator, I understand these issues and have been able to reach across the aisle in a bipartisan way and pass effective legislation. It matters who we send to Washington. And it matters who serves our community with the best interests of the people. These issues are important. But what's more important is your participation in the process. What's more important is us as government officials coming together and putting partisan politics aside and making sure we're doing the right thing at the right time for the people. I think it's time we put people over politics. I'm a young man who understands these issues. I'm someone who's dedicated my life to serving others because I know the value of that. I understand the value of a great education. I understand the value of working with others. And this experience is going to propel me to be a great U.S. Senator. It's going to propel me to advocate for the needs of our constituents through all across Illinois, not just one area. It takes all kinds to make a world. And I'm dedicated, I'm passionate to make it happen. I was reminded of a story when I was thinking, when I first decided to start a business. And I remember as a young boy, I didn't have anything, and I was going into one of the stores, and I was talking to the guy who got me started off. And I said, one of these days, I'm going to own this place. And I didn't have anything. He started laughing. He said, little young man, I like your confidence. I like your enthusiasm. I like the fact that you're able to have vision and set goals and set dreams to be able to want to do something. A few years passed. I'm playing college. I come back in the store. I said, you remember me? He said, yeah, I do remember you. You said one day you're going to own it. He said, you got enough to write the check? I said, not yet, but I'm working on it. A few years passed. I get drafted in the NFL. I come back. I said, hey, have you ever thought about franchising? Have you ever thought about opening up an opportunity to expand and grow your business? He said, no, I haven't thought about that, but I'm doing okay right now. I said, give me a couple weeks and I'm going to come back with a proposal. A few weeks passed. I go back in. I asked, was he there? He said he wasn't there. And as I was leaving out, he was coming in. I said, hey, I came back with that proposal. We talked. He said, you know what? Let me think about this. Let me read it over and I'll get back with you. A few months passed. I get a phone call. He said, I've been thinking about what you were saying and I've done some research and I think you may be onto something. We opened up another store, franchise opportunities, and not only did he help me start my business, I helped grow his. So that's the type of leadership that I represent and the type of leadership that I was able to do with grow and expanding business opportunities. And those are the type of, that's the type of leader that you're going to have in Washington, someone who understands the business, someone who understands government, and someone who comes from the community to understand the issues that the communities are faced and the challenges that we all face throughout our communities. Like I said before, it matters who you send to Washington. And I think that now is an opportunity to send someone who's not a bureaucrat. We have enough bureaucrats and lawyers in Washington. We need someone who's practical, someone who understands business, someone who understands all issues, to be able to make real conscious decisions to push our government forward. Once again, I'm thankful for this opportunity to be able to speak today. Hopefully, you guys have got a glimpse, a better opportunity of who Napoleon Harris is, why I'm running, and some things that you guys believe, that I know I believe, that could make this government more efficient and effective as I push forward. So thank you for the opportunity. I am Napoleon Harris, and I approve this message.
I'm not even sure we need questions after that, but we will definitely ask a few. I have one here. Are there any others? We have a few more? Oh, we have lots of questions. Good for you. Thank you so much. More importantly, Senator Harris just said he's a mama's boy, and that means a whole lot to a whole lot of us in here. That means he was raised well. There are a few more coming, right? Okay. So I'm going to ask you this first one. It's not a difficult one at all. And it simply says, Mr. Gardner, you're a former professional football player. Am I about to make this up? Your former professional football partner, separated by a few years, right? How many years are we separated here? 30. Says, and from Roosevelt University says, if you should happen to not win in a couple of weeks, will you consider running for mayor of the city of Chicago?
Thank you for the question. Well, it's always flattering when someone respects your ability to lead. I've always considered myself a leader, and I believe in always leading by example. Unfortunately, I don't live in the city of Chicago, but you never know what New Horizons may offer, and you never know where this journey may take you. I believe in whatever office I get or don't get, I believe in anything that I do, I always want to walk in integrity. And I always want to make sure that I'm doing the right thing for the people and by the people. And that's something that I pledge to myself and to my family, and I owe that to myself and to the communities in which I serve.
Told you he was raised well. So Ashley, who was also our table mate, says, from Lydia Healthcare, and I'm sure you're familiar with them. Did you say you all in Robbins? Yeah. So it's right by you, right?
It's in my district.
In your district, of course. Says, in hopes of you becoming the next U.S. Senator, how and what will you do to help with the mentally ill?
Great question. Well, when you think about the challenges that we face here in Illinois, over the last few years, we've shut down 6 mental health facilities. And that's a direct correlation between some of the services that we need. And when you think about mass shootings, when you think about our overpopulation in our criminal justice system and our jails, we have Cook County as one of the largest mental health facilities in jail. We need to invest more money to make sure these people who need these services get the resources. We've cut funding here in the state. They've cut it nationally. We need to ensure that you need a senator who's going to fight tooth and nail to make sure that those resources are allocated back to our most vulnerable. We need to protect them because they cannot protect themselves. So it would be my belief and my strength to be able to go out and continue to fight and advocate for funds to help curtail the epidemic that we have here with mentally ill and mental health issues.
This is a fun question. Well, I don't know if it's fun, but certainly interesting to me. Steve Shucker? Never let it be said that I agree with Dr. Green, but sometimes legibility is a big factor. But don't ever, ever tell him. I will deny it. I will totally deny it. What is more difficult, learning the political climate or finding out about the new CTE, concussion issues in the NFL? And would you have still played if you knew?
I'll start with the latter question first. Yes, I would have still played if I knew. And part of that drive is me as a competitor. You know, I'm very competitive, and I can't say at the time I knew about the CTE before I played football, but nevertheless, the competition, the drive, to be able to use my mind and body physically, spiritually, and mentally, to be able to go out and compete, to go out with a band of brothers and go out for a mission to accomplish something. And I think that parallels to government. And government, it's a team sport, similar to athletics. You have to work well with others. Sometimes you work well, sometimes you don't. But I think at the end of the day, in both, you need leadership. You need someone to direct traffic, so to speak. And in the NFL, I was a middle linebacker. I made the calls. When Peyton Manning came up to the line, sometimes we had a call that we said, this is what we're going to do. He get to making audibles. It was up to my discretion to change the call and put us in the right position that was going to be the best for everyone. I see that role being no different in government. I'm quarterbacking my district right now, and it's up to me to make sure I'm advocating and getting the results for my district first. As a United States Senator, I'll be able to navigate and line back for the entire state of Illinois. And I'm no stranger to that. You know, I've made a lot of tackles in my career. I've tackled great running backs, Jerome Bettis, Curtis Martin, Eddie George, Corey Dillon, you name it. And now I'm tackling the problems of Illinois. So I'm ready for the challenge, and I'm excited about it because I know that I'm ready. The community I grew up in prepared me for this moment. Northwestern University prepared me for this moment. The NFL prepared me for this moment. And the political climate in which I'm in now has prepared me for this moment. I'm prepared, you know, and I'm ready to lead, and I've always been a leader, and I will always continue to lead from the front and not the back.
So I've got questions about his international position. I've got questions about Medicare, Medicaid. I've got questions about for-profit schools. I've got questions about your personal business. We could be here all day. Really, we could. But why don't we talk about the profit schools? Liz Veth, am I saying your name right, Liz? Veth, okay. Says for-profit schools are the next subprime mortgage crisis. But it's also scary to know how high the interest rates are for students to get loans with the federal government. Can you discuss that a little bit?
Yes. Well, when you really talk about and dive into the loan crisis, when you talk about federal debt for student loans, it's embarrassing. We have trillions of dollars of debt. We have a lot of silent pain. And for those of you who don't know what silent pain is we have parents and grandparents who have taken out loans to make sure their baby goes to college, to make sure that their child has the best education possible. And now they're working longer hours, longer into their adult life, because they can't retire because they're saddled with debt. We have to do something about this at the federal level. So one of the first committees that I would want to join is the Education Committee, because I would want to hold hearing for our loan services. Right now, 98% of student loans are federally financed and federally backed. So that means that we as taxpayers are on the hook for it. So it really has no advantage for them to pay off the loan debt, because they're going to continue to make money on it as long as we're paying for the student loans. I believe in the 10%, the pay as you earn. When you talk about student debt, I believe that you shouldn't pay more than 10% of what you actually earn. And we also need a process in which the students, instead of being saddled with debt and just working just to pay off debt for the rest of their lives, change the formula or wrap it into a mortgage so now that we're paying for homes and we're able to invest and not be paying off debt for the rest of our lives.
Great answer. So, I'm actually just sitting here. Which one would you care to answer? Because I'm telling you, we could be here all day.
Go ahead.
We could be here all day. Shoot, huh? So, let's talk about your personal businesses a little bit.
Well, you know, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm in the restaurant business where I employ a couple hundred individuals. It's something that was important to me because growing up where I grew up, we didn't have access to jobs. There was low unemployment. When you think about just here in the city of Chicago, young African-American males between the ages of 14 and 26, unemployment rate is about 50%, 54%, somewhere in that range. It's deplorable. We need to do a better job with investing in business and investing in small business and entrepreneurs so we can grow our economy. Well, we constantly have this conversation about the minimum wage, and I support that. I voted to raise the minimum wage, but I think the vision is to grow that conversation. When I was young, I didn't close my eyes at night when I laid my head down and say, I want to wake up, and when I wake up, I want to work a minimum wage job. When I was dreaming, I dreamed about being like Walter Payton, dreamed like being like Michael Jordan, hitting game-winning shots. I've dreamed about being a doctor. I've dreamed about being an architect, designing a building that was larger than the Sears Tower at the time. Now, we're just constantly focused on the lowest possible ways that we can make. I would like to expand that topic, and let's talk about our fullest potential. Let's talk about how do we grow business. Let's talk about how do we invest in human capital to create the jobs and economic opportunities that we look for. And instead of talking about what the least we can make, let's maximize our potential. We should want everyone to have great paying jobs so they can afford homes, invest, be good citizens, and grow with our tax base. And those are the type of initiatives, that's the type of vision that this senator has for our state, to make sure that we're competitive, to make sure we're compassionate, but more importantly, to make sure that we are moving progressively forward in our economics and in our policies that we produce to make sure that everyone has a fair opportunity to be productive in their own respective lives.
So we've talked about, that maybe they had a question for Senator. So we talked a little bit about mental health. We talked some about education. We talked about business. This question comes from Mark Lovelace. Over there, okay. From Roosevelt. And I'm going to sum this up for you. Basically, he's saying, internationally, do you think is a realist or a liberal? That's a good question. And then, should the U.S. invest more in the United Nations and less in our allies? And what should our position on the U.S. be from the Middle East perspective? Should it be reevaluated in Washington?
I guess I'll get right to the part of the point.
That's
Is what should our stance be in the Middle East? Is
Right.
basically is a sum up.
Right.
I believe that the United States, when you talk about the Middle East, the first thing that comes to most people's mind is terror. We're fighting ISIS. We're fighting different things that America investing our troops. I don't believe in costly wars. I believe that we need to ensure that we, at all costs, stop from going to war. But I do believe we need to be leaders. And as leaders in the United States, we need to make sure that we create strong allies with our partners in the Middle East to ensure that we have peace in the Middle East. Namely, Israel has been one of our greatest allies. When we go over there, we need to ensure that our Middle Eastern allies put skin in the game. They should be investing resources, money, and troops. And we need to make sure that we have strategic alliances to ensure that we have access to their airspace and their waterways so we can have troops deployed over there so we can act in a moment's notice. I don't believe that war is the answer. I believe in diplomacy. I think we need to always lead with diplomacy first, but nevertheless be ready to act if we need to.
In closing, one word to distinguish you from everybody else and to describe you.
Just the one word? Well, if I had to say one word, I would say relentless. Someone who's a football player, I've been relentless my whole life. I've been someone who had to overcome a number of obstacles. And I see this as just being another obstacle. And every time that I'm faced with an obstacle, I've always been able to overcome it, whether I jump over it, go around it, or go through it. So it's another barrier, another hurdle in the process of becoming a United States Senator. But I think if you want to answer the question directly, then you ask me what separates me from the other candidates. Well, I think a number of things. I think first and foremost, I understand these issues because I've actually lived them. No one has to tell me how to be poor. I understand that. I understand what it's like when you're given an opportunity to take advantage of it and run with it. Going to Northwestern was no small feat. We know the rigors of the university. We understand getting in is not always easy. Those were great. I had a good experience there. Then I went on and played professional sports, which gave me a unique background and a unique perspective because we're dealing with different groups who come into a locker room, different socioeconomic backgrounds, that we all have to mend fences and grow together for one common purpose. And then you talk about my experience in the legislature. I voted for these issues that matter most to our communities. I voted for criminal justice reforms. I voted to raise the minimum wage. I voted to protect our seniors and our most vulnerable. And I voted to get infrastructure dollars back into my community in projects that matter to our communities. When you talk about economic investment, when you talk about education funding mechanism being changed, these are things that I'm actively working on and have voted for. And when you talk about business, I think I'm the only candidate that can actually say that they have created a job, not facilitated. I facilitate as well as a state senator, but I've created jobs and economic opportunities. So I think when you combine the real world experience from someone who grew up and understands these issues from a personal standpoint, I understand the issues that many communities across this state and this country face. When you talk about from a political standpoint, I'm involved in government now. I've been elected. I've passed legislation. I've reached across the aisle with Republicans in a bipartisan manner to pass legislation that's meaningful to our communities. And from a community standpoint, I understand the issues because I've lived it. And from a business standpoint, I understand business. I understand what businesses need to be successful. So like I said before, I always wanted to be like Mike when I was younger. So what you need to do on Election Day is punch 23 and vote for me, Napoleon Harris, the next United States Senator of the great state of Illinois.